Meeting for July 19th, 2021. So first item on the agenda is attendance. Barbie, could you please go around and perform attendance roll call?
Okay, Chairman Scott Shelton,
Chairman Shelton, aye.
Vice Chairman Bob Morgan,
Bob Morgan here.
Nicholas Nash, Terry Nolan,
Terry Nolan present.
I see Nicholas Nash, but we didn't hear.
Present.
Oh, thank you.
thank you. Deborah LeMay,
Deepa Lemay present.
James Granger.
Yeah, I think James is having some difficulty joining. Let's give him one more second, see if he can join.
Acknowledged. Got the stop clock going.
I just resent him the Zoom link.
I did. I resent it to him. He said something was glitching.
Story of my life.
We do have little intermittent internet due to the rains or whatever since last 2 hours. So that could be the issue in Waxhaw area as well.
All right, we'll give it a few more seconds since we have a lot of business. We'll get started in about 30 seconds. Or we'll resume roll call in 30 seconds. All right, well, hopefully James is with us in spirit. Barbie, can you please resume roll call?
Is this for all the members?
No, if you have anybody, I don't think you do after
James
James.
Granger was the last one, and
Okay.
I do know he popped on for a few moments and then popped back off, so.
Okay, we're gonna need to get going. So we do have a quorum. Okay, so next order of business, B, approval of the agenda. I would like to add an agenda item to the end of this meeting, update and discussion from the OAB meeting. Motion to add the agenda item to the end of the meeting.
We could do a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Very good. So with that, let's have a vote on the amended agenda. Barbie, if you can please do a vote.
Chair, do you vote after everyone else, or do you vote?
Usually they start with me, that's fine.
Okay. Chairman Scott Shelton,
Chairman Shelton, aye.
Vice Chair Bob Morgan,
Vice Chair Bob Morgan, aye.
Nicholas Nash,
Aye.
Terry Nolan,
Aye.
Deborah LeMay,
Aye.
James Granger.
Okay, so it appears, Barbie, the ayes have it.
So
Are
I-
amended. Okay, the amended agenda is approved. So next order of business, C, minutes for correction and approval. Minute meetings from the meeting we had like 2 months ago. I'm sure everybody looked at that. May I have a motion to approve the minute meetings, the last minute meetings? Meeting minutes, excuse me. Meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve the last meeting minutes.
Thank you, Terry. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, I don't see any raised hands. So Barbie, can we have a vote?
Chairman Scott Shelton,
Chairman Shelton, aye.
Vice Chair Bob Morgan,
Vice Chair Bob Morgan, aye.
Nicholas Nash,
Aye.
Terry Nolan,
Aye.
Dip in the May,
Aye.
James Granger. Seems like the ayes have it.
Thank you very much. So new business, D. Number 1, general rezoning petition RZ-012-462-2021. And is a request by the town of Waxhaw for a general town rezoning map amendment from R40 Union County Residential to NC Neighborhood Center. The two properties located at 2410 and 2412 South Providence Road, tax parcel ID number 01061590003 and 061590003E are approximately 9 acres combined. I'll turn this over to Lisa Thompson for her presentation.
Thank you, Chairman.
Hey, Lisa, let me, so James Granger is sitting in the attendees section. Barbara, could you admit him in real quick? Apologize for the interruption, Lisa and Scott.
No problem.
Thank you, Madison.
Is it the telephone number?
It's just the
Oh, I
James
see.
Granger.
I
Yeah.
see.
Hey, James, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right.
I'm sorry, I had a little problem with this because the information on my computer said this is from November 16th, 2020. And I was a little confused.
Well, no, we're happy you're able to join us.
All right.
It's a reoccurring link.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Petition RZ-012-464-2021 is a request by the town of Waxhaw for a general town rezoning map amendment from R40 Union County to NC Neighborhood Center. The two properties are located at 2410 and 2412 South Providence Road. The subject property is highlighted in blue, located on the west side of Providence Road, north of Gray Byram and south of Bonds Grove Church Road. It currently has one existing single-family home. It's located on the site with an existing zoning of R40. On the screen is the existing zoning map. To the north is Park Providence subdivision. It's zoned R3. To the east is Providence Grove subdivision, also zoned R3. To the south, in this brown color, is NC Neighborhood Center, which is that Southern boutique store. And then in purple is our employment center. Also to the west, there's a single family home, and then you have R3, which is the Barrington subdivision. The future land use map designates the subject property as mixed use. Mixed use areas are targeted for a mixture of retail, office, and medium density residential housing choices that are walkable and convenient to neighborhoods. It should be placed in strategic locations that can function harmoniously with the surrounding residential areas. The property is also on the cusp of a neighborhood development center. The recommended zoning district for this property is NC Neighborhood Center. On the presentation slide is what the zoning map would look like. NC zoning would serve as a good transition between this employment center, the purple below to the south, and the R3 single-family residential district to the north. Neighborhood center allows for smaller scale offices, neighborhood-oriented retail and services, as well as a mixture of homes. In your packet, I've included a summary sheet of the dimensional standards, primary uses, and the relevant code sections and note sheets from the LDC. So tonight we'll be looking for 2 votes for recommendation. The first is a land use plan consistency statement. This statement must describe how the zoning proposed is consistent or inconsistent and explain why the proposed action is reasonable and in the public interest. Staff has provided the following statement that can be adopted or modified for the board's discussion. And then the requested action is a motion recommending approval of the zoning request for neighborhood center to the Board of Commissioners, and a motion to recommend the provided or amended consistency statement. With that, myself and Mr. Jim Weinberger is on the call to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lisa, for the presentation. I open the floor up to discussion.
Well, as this is Nicholas Nash, as always, I would ask, are there any members from the community, adjacent homeowners, who would like to either speak for or in opposition to this motion?
We did send a notice to all the adjacent property owners. We have not heard from them, and there is a public hearing set to go to the Board of Commissioners at the end of this month. So as of today's date, we have not heard from the adjacent property owners.
Okay. In the news this week, there's been much publicity about a construction moratorium in Union County. Presumably, the rezoning of these parcels would be for new development. How does the moratorium of construction affect this site and the plans to develop this site, which would further impact the demand on wastewater treatment plants? I guess that's a question to the applicant.
I can start, and then Jim, if you're on the line.
Can you hear me?
We have to zone this property as something within 60 days of the annexation. So that's what we're doing here tonight. He then has to go through a construction plan approval process. And depending on the size of the project, it would come back before the planning board and Board of Commissioners. But tonight's just a general rezoning. And then typically, once they have that site plan approval, they're vested for 5 years. So if and when sewer capacity opens up, I think we're looking at another 6 months or so. It'll take him that long to get through the construction plan process. But if and when that opens back up, he could get in line or be in line with Union County Public Works. They have a separate plan approval process. So they would have to give him that go ahead.
Right. So I don't want to make light of this situation. You say you indicated that the moratorium could be lifted within 6 months. Can you advise part of the preconditions to lifting the moratorium? Is that the construction of a new wastewater treatment plant? Or how do we increase the capacity of existing plants in the county?
Sure. The Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners voted to expand the 12 Mile Creek Basin from 7 to 9.5 or 7.5 to 9. So that is moving forward. That could take 3 or 4 years to get that expansion complete. There's also another project up in the Indian Trail area that would help. It's a new treatment plant that could take 7 to 10 years to build. That would take a lot of pressure off the southern 12 Mile Creek Basin.
So if I understand you correctly, it wouldn't be 6 months. It could be up to 5 to 10 years to increase the capacity to allow us to develop anything in Union County. Is that correct?
Right now, there's the permit hold is because we're over capacity with the additional rains from last year. So they are looking at the numbers from the past 12 months, and it's on a rolling basis. So right now they're looking at June of 2020, which was, we had a super wet season, and that started drying out probably November. So they're looking at last year's numbers. And if those numbers go less than 95%, they will open permitting back up. There is enough capacity, given the number of buildings that we've done in the past. I think they do about 800 homes a year in Union County. There should be enough to get us to 3 or 4 years.
Well, I hear a lot of ifs and maybes and could be's. I think this would be a good project for the Waxhaw town. However, I'm not seeing a clear path forward. I see a lot of optimism, and in all candid, to be very candid, I can't vote positive for this. I think the land could be developed for other uses until Union County lifts the moratorium. I think it's just a bad idea at this time.
I understand we do have to give it a zoning district. So the land use plan and the surrounding area recommends this neighborhood center zoning. So you guys are able to recommend denial given the comments you made. Or
Hi, Lisa, this is Scott. I believe that was Nick asking the questions. Thanks for your questions and your comments, Nick. I believe at this point, it's I think that will occur further upstream. We're looking at zoning at this point and just recommending a motion to approve, make a motion to recommend or not recommend this zoning.
I would make a motion to not rezone the site based on the aforementioned reasons.
Okay, so make a motion, even though this land has to have a zoning, you want to proceed with that motion and that recommendation.
We could either do that, or we can table this motion for a future time until the moratorium is lifted.
Okay, so we have that. We got, go ahead and Nick, and please state your motion one more time.
Can I speak?
Yeah, we're gonna have more discussion, so
Okay.
we'll follow up. Jim, if you would like to please comment, please go ahead.
Yes, I appreciate the time and effort you guys are putting into this, and thank you for letting me have time to speak. I understand Nicholas' concern. You know, everything is sort of up in the air in reference to the sewer, from what I understand. I haven't been following it as tight as you have, or y'all have. I know that presently we're just requesting a zoning, being that we just annexed into Waxhaw. And based on your land use map and based on conversations with Jeff and the mayor, they recommended this zoning, being that we have to have a zoning for this property. And we agreed with their assessment, and that's why we have followed through with going with the neighborhood center zoning. I'll be glad to answer any questions you'll have. I believe that the sewer isn't definite either way. I think Nick is correct. There's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. And I think we're all trying to figure out where we're going to be, 6 months to a year from now.
Thank you, Jim. This is Scott, Chairman. Yeah, we're looking for recommendations at this point. And with that said, I open up the floor to anybody else who would like to have a comment on this before I ask for a motion.
This is Terry Nolan. I have questions, please.
Terry, please proceed.
Thank you. Am I to be clear that this is part of the original land development code, the new approval that we've already passed? And this is in alignment with that?
The LDC, yes.
Okay, so today we're just looking for rezoning based on that approval that we've already given.
Yeah, amendment to rezone, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Regarding the utility, I hear the number 95% thrown around a lot. My understanding is that that's the maximum capacity, is that we're not allowed to build past the 95% capacity. Am I correct on that, Lisa?
That's the regulation given by the Board of Commissioners, yes.
Okay. So I have a concern with waiting for that threshold. You mentioned a couple of times that we want to wait until that falls down below the 95%. I don't think it's in our best interest to continue with new building being at that maximum. So that's one thing we could discuss.
This is Scott, Chairman Scott Shelton. One thing, just keep in mind, this was annexed in. And so when it's annexed in, as Lisa pointed out, it has to, a zoning has to be assigned to it. So they annexed in, and there's a certain time limit to assign zoning. So we're looking for recommendations, motions for this.
Sure, I guess I'm a little unclear then, Scott, because all these details are presented to us.
Yes.
And there's some things that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with beyond the water. There's multiple concerns I have with this. So, I mean, we can vote on the zoning, but if we don't like this, what are our options? I'm not hearing what the alternative is. You're saying we have to vote it to a zone, but if we don't want to approve it as you presented it, because I have some very strong feelings about what I'm seeing here. Not only the water infrastructure, I can just throw some out there. In fact, I'd like to see an engineering study from the county, who we already know is dealing with water issues. I'd like to see a study if we could request that before we voted on something like this.
Yeah, this is on Chairman Shelton. Lisa, can you, Terry brings up a good point. Can you remind and go through the options for this on the rezoning front?
Sure, you have to adopt that land use plan consistency statement. So if we do recommend a different zoning, we have on the screen here, you can see these categories, R1, R3, R4, neighborhood center. The land use plan does recommend mixed use neighborhood center. So you would have to provide a reason why why the zoning is consistent or not consistent with the land use plan. And then you can make a recommendation for a different zoning, but the application before you tonight is to rezone to a neighborhood center. So you could deny that request, and then you can make a recommendation for one of these.
Thank you. Are we allowed to discuss these issues in detail? I feel like you want to reroute me back into making a decision on a zoning, because these questions that we have great bearing on our answer to this zoning. When we discuss the land development code individually with the staff and also in our group settings, at least I walked away with the understanding that if we approve the entire plot, the entire plan, that we would be able to discuss the individual segments to see what worked and what didn't. I still feel like I'd need those discussions. I have concerns about some of the language in here, mixed use communities. We've got up to 4 multifamily residential, adjacent to single family homeowners. I've heard that some have been notified and no responses, but how many have been notified? Did you notify just the ones immediately adjacent or everybody?
Okay, this
within
is,
mile?
yeah, Chairman Shelton, Terry, these are good questions, and this is exactly what we're doing. We're having a discussion. So
Okay.
just like you're doing now, just ask Lisa or the rest of the staff each question. They'll
Okay.
provide an answer for each one. So ask your first question and allow the staff an opportunity to answer, and we'll go from there. Great questions, great concerns, and we'll proceed that route.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So I guess I'll go back and could we request an engineering study, a utility certified study, to say what capacity is recommended, not just at the maximum, but what for efficiency, for health, and the other standardized criteria for water. It also mentions utility and infrastructure, and I guess I have the same question about the road infrastructure. So if we're approving
Thank you.
retail and multifamily use, what burden does that place on Providence Road? So that would be the second question.
Sure. So we don't know the use at this point. This is just a general rezoning. So once we get construction plans, you guys will get to review that, and the TIA, traffic impact analysis, will have to be done, along with all the topo, the stormwater. So until we know the use, at that point is when we would weigh in on how those uses affect the infrastructure.
Yeah, so this is Chairman Shelton again. So that's a good point. So this is just zoning at this point. There still will be construction plans provided, at which time further comment will occur. If there's questions about utility, traffic counts, et cetera, that could occur at that time. So just keep that in mind as we're trying to sign
Yeah, so Scott is correct. So when you take into consideration this rezoning, you're looking at the zoning district as a whole. So you're looking at all the uses permitted in the zoning district. And so it's hard to speculate because we're not at a phase of that. So with this new annexation, we're required within a certain amount of days to have a zoning district applied to this parcel. And so that's why, since we missed our last month's planning board meeting, that's why we're here today, kind of getting, again, we're presenting our recommendation for the neighborhood center, which is in agreement with the future land use plan. And so, like I said, you have to think about the zoning district itself and the uses within that zoning district.
And I think we're doing that. Thank you. I do have a follow-up question about the zoning. If there's a component we don't like or may not choose to support, such as the multifamily use portion, is that something that can be modified if it's a mixed use? Can we later modify that?
So for example, you're talking about the district as a whole or as part of a future development?
So if we, let's say we approve the mixed use development as you're requesting today, does that lock in the components that are laid out in this plan, such as the mixed use designation, the multifamily type properties? I'm trying to look for the wording right here. Or do we have an ability to edit that definition?
So for the zoning district, based on your approval, you'd be approving the zoning district with all the requirements within it. To modify uses or requirements like lot width, setbacks, that's a different process. It's a text amendment process where we have to, so for example, we're doing a text amendment later in this meeting to alter planning board and BOA requirements of our ordinance. And so that's a requirement that would go before the planning board as it is today, and then on to the Board of Commissioners for final say. So for example, you can't apply conditions to a rezoning You're just, like I said, looking at the district as a whole.
So in summary, if we vote to approve this, it would include the potential to have all of the things listed as possibilities.
Yes.
So that would be neighborhood center, allowing for smaller scale offices, neighborhood oriented retail and services, as well as cottage homes, townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes at a rate of no more than 8 units per acre. And that would not be adjustable, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll reserve time for others' questions. Thank you very much.
Chairman Shelton, thank you, Terry, for following up. Anybody else have any comments or questions for the staff on this matter?
So Scott, this is Nick Nash again. So we've annexed this into the city of, or the town of Waxhaw, is that correct?
That's correct. Now, I
What is
believe
it?
we have 30 or 60 days. I'm not sure which is it, Lisa, 30 or 60 days to assign zoning for this.
Yeah.
What is this zoned in Union County?
R40,
Which is what?
40,000 square foot lots.
Which is single family?
Yeah, single family, about 1 unit per acre.
Okay. So in theory, we could annex it, we could change the zoning to single family, correct? Similar to what the Union County has it?
You can, yeah, I mean, you would deny the request and you would give the reasons why, and then explain why it's consistent or not consistent with the land use plan. And then you guys can make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners what zoning you would like to see.
Chairman Shelton, thank you, Lisa. And just to the rest of the board members, maybe Terry, maybe Nicholas, is there a concern that this would be turned to a multifamily project?
That is one of the concerns.
Okay, I figured that following your
Not
logic.
completely,
the
not
question.
completely, but even above,
Yeah,
even above. And is that right for Waxhaw? And is that right for what the people want? So
no, perfect. Makes sense, Terry. So I believe with the LDC and future land use, that can or cannot happen, Lisa or Madison.
Right, it's got to be a mixture of retail
Yes.
and it could be multifamily or single family attached,
Okay,
not apartments.
not apartments. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay, there you go. So hopefully that helps everybody.
now, can you define multifamily for me?
And that's
Um,
Terry Nolan's question.
Sure, like we define single family attached, that means townhomes. Multifamily is I think several units. Let me see if there's a definition.
Sorry, I flipped my ordinance to read the exact definition for what our ordinance states.
There we go.
The multifamily dwelling is a building designed, constructed, or reconstructed with 5 or more dwelling units placed on top of one another or side by side and sharing common walls, floors, and ceilings. Such units shall generally be developed in a unified manner and shall be located on one lot unless the individual units are under condominium ownership. Multifamily dwelling units can also be located on their upper stories of commercial developments as part of mixed-use projects as allowed by this code. So multifamily, such as the last part of that definition, upper stories, are allowed in the neighborhood center. Now, ground floor apartment units, for example, the Ardmore apartments, are not permitted in the neighborhood center. Those are only permitted in the employment center.
Thank you.
So if my understanding is correct, then it is, if not, it's not the apartment or condominium, it's probably the townhomes kind of side by side multifamily. That is the possibility.
Yeah, this is Chairman Shelton. That's Deepa asking the question.
Sorry, Scott Shelton. This is Deepa, yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
that is correct.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, Madison. Chairman Shelton, does anybody else have questions or comments?
So, I mean, the goal is to kind of change those percentages of residential versus commercial. So we've got a piece along Providence Road. And then we probably do some transitioning back to the residential, at least to the north. So I can see this as commercial, you know, along Providence Road with the connection. And then we have employment center, which is more commercial and more development. So NC is a good transition. We just have to do a good job when the site plan does come in to protect the single family to the north. And we can do that with some buffering and whatever else.
Chairman Shelton speaking. Thank you, Lisa. So I'd like to go through one more time to ask if there's any remaining questions before I ask mine. Barbara, can you go through to each member and just ask if you have any more questions or comments?
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions or comments?
No, this is Shelton speaking. If you can just ask each individual person.
Okay. Vice Chair Bob Morgan.
Yeah, this is Vice Chair Bob Morgan. Yeah, I thought this was just a simple statutory deal where we're annexing the property in from Union County. We just changed to the most appropriate zoning, and it just seems that that is the most appropriate zoning. So yeah, I think it's pretty simple.
Nicholas Nash.
So we could annex this property as single family detached. And at a later date, once the wastewater treatment plant issue is corrected, it could be rezoned at a later date. Is that correct?
That is incorrect. So it's been annexed and accepted by the Board of Commissioners. And so we are required to put a zoning district on it. So we can't delay and keep it as Union County because Union County no longer has jurisdiction over the planning and zoning of the parcel.
Right, that's not what I asked. What I asked was, can we zone this as single family detached?
Gotcha.
And then
Okay.
the applicant can later come back to the planning committee and rezone it for multifamily high rise if they wanted to.
Gotcha. Got your question. Sorry for the misunderstanding. So
Yeah,
as
we just don't have any say over water and sewer or traffic. It's those are out of our hands. If you wanted to do that, you would just recommend denial of the NC zoning. Make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, and then in your recommendation, you can request that it be a single family zoning. But you also have to explain why with your land use consistency statement. And
Right.
that's going to be the hard part because it's mixed use. What's on the screen now is what the land use plan recommends.
I have no further questions.
Terry Nolan.
Hi, yes, Terry Nolan, I have another question. Earlier in discussions with the town before the LDC approval recommendation we made, I was advised that there was a list of businesses or retail that we could exclude or would be excluded from any new developments. Types of businesses, do those apply to this particular case?
So we have a permitted use list. I can pull that up.
Yeah, is that what you're referencing? Like the big use table where some uses are allowed, some uses are not? Trying to remember back to those discussions.
Yeah, we were looking at particular businesses that might not be attractive to the culture in Waxhaw, selling certain substances,
Right.
attracting.
I think we may have talked about tattoo parlors at one point, I think, maybe.
I was trying not to mention anything
Right.
specific, but that could be
Sure.
one. Nothing against the tattoos, but
Gotcha.
keeping in consistency with our family theme here in Waxhaw. I think that's important, that we see if we have an exclusion list and if we are able to add to that in due course or edit that if we decide.
Again, it'd have to be a text amendment to amend this list in the existing LDC. If they were to apply through conditional zoning, you have complete flexibility to make those changes. But if there's something with a P, it means it's permitted by right within the district. I'm gonna go down to NC. So it's hard because it's on a. We have this in a different format.
Okay, so the answer is yes, it can be edited or amended later.
Yep, we'd have to do a text amendment.
Sorry?
Yes, through a text amendment process.
Okay, thank you.
Deepa Nume.
Deepali May speaking. Most of the questions were asked by Terry and Nicholas Nash. One question, if I may, and I might be reiterating that question. So what was the pulse that we got from the adjacent single family owners about the development that is being proposed? Do we have any response to that?
We have not.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
James Granger.
Yes, again, most of the questions have been answered that concern me. Can we annex it and give it back to the county? Yeah, I thought that would get a laugh. I'd like to see the property zoned for something like a park or a natural area to be left alone as it is. We certainly have more than enough housing developments causing enough traffic problems. We don't need another one. So if we could rezone it something for a park or natural area, I'd be all for it. Thank you.
And Chairman Scott Shelton.
Chairman Shelton speaking. Thank you, everybody, for their questions and comments. It's appreciated. And just simply go back and kind of rejoin Bob's sentiments. This has to be zone something mixed use. It does appear to be consistent and appropriate for this particular property. And all the other questions will occur further upstream and can be addressed at that time. But I think this is certainly an appropriate use for this property. So with that said, I open the floor up to a motion to recommend this amendment or any other motions for that matter.
This is Nick Nash. I would make a motion that the applicant's plan zoning be denied and that the plan zoning be similar to the Union County zoning until a time in which the wastewater treatment plant issues can be resolved and corrected to allow for more density, higher density type development.
So which, I hear your motion, I'm trying to understand it. So do you have a recommendation on what zoning you would recommend for this?
Well, you'll have to tell me what zoning within Waxhaw is similar to that in Union County R4.
I think it'd be R1.
R1.
So I would recommend it be zoned R1.
Okay, and then with that, we can do this as a separate motion. If that passes, we need to explain that it is or is the recommended zoning is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan and why it is or is not reasonable. So just after the vote, kind of be prepared to make that explanation.
Okay,
I'll second that motion. This is Terry Nolan.
This is Chairman Shelton. We have a motion and a second. We'll need to put this to a vote. Barbara, and as Lisa stated, Nicholas, you'll have to give your reasons why you provided this motion. So with that said,
Chairman Scott. Shelton.
sorry, I muted myself. Barbara, please perform the vote.
Okay, Chairman Scott Shelton,
That's a nay, that's a no. Chairman Shelton, no.
Vice Chair Bob Morgan,
Vice Chair Bob Morgan said no.
Nicholas Nash,
aye.
Terry Nolan,
Aye.
Deborah Nemay,
Aye.
James Granger.
Aye.
I have 4 unanimous and 2 nays, or 4 ayes and 2 nays.
Okay, and then if someone could maybe take some notes here, we've got to, it's inconsistent with the land use plan. And it is unreasonable because.
Due to recent events with the county's wastewater treatment plants, which were unknown at the time when the compatibility plan was adopted, the zoning for this parcel should be low density.
Again, we really shouldn't be basing our decision on something we can't control.
I can add to that.
Sure.
So the land use plan general oversight is to do positive things for Waxhaw. This particular development is inconsistent in the way that there currently is an unstable infrastructure in and around the area, not only water, but road infrastructure and other possible utility. I think it warrants further investigation and engineering studies to be provided to this board for further consideration on next steps for this property. Additionally, I think that the local people adjacent to these properties have been poorly vetted, improperly consulted, little attention given to the value associated with a mixed-use development, which includes multifamily units, which are well known to affect adjacent housing values well beyond the first street, usually within 1 to 5 miles. There's been no effort made to compensate those homeowners for the loss of value that could be immediate and long-term. And given the proximity to many neighborhoods, I think it should be denied in its current fashion.
This is Chairman Shelton. So I don't know who has control of the slide, but we'll need to read the recommendation and the inconsistency statement. So either Nicholas or Terry will read that. If we can pull that up for them to make their job easier, I would appreciate it.
So we can adopt the statements that Ms. Nolan Range just gave.
Do you have another slide that talks about inconsistency?
I did not do a draft inconsistency statement. But I wrote down that the proposed project is inconsistent with the land use plan. However, it is reasonable to deny because of unstable infrastructure that warrants further studies. Poor communication is not really like a zoning land use thing.
I'm sorry, I'd like to include that because it does affect the property owners adjacent. It's important.
Yeah, I would agree that it appears that the immediate neighborhood has not been, the development has not been vetted with the neighborhood.
Sure, I understand that. And we can put that in the comments. It's just not it doesn't have anything to do with the land use plan
Okay.
use. We can definitely note that for the Board of Commissioners for sure.
All right, this is Chairman Shelton. Lisa or Madison, I thought we had a inconsistency statement that we usually have, consistent or inconsistent. Is that not available?
Right. So what you would do is, so with what is up on the screen now, you would just say the request is inconsistent with the 2016 comp plan,
Perfect.
your planning goals, and then you would restate your reasonings. So we leave it open-ended for the specific reasons.
Okay, so Chairman Shelton, thank you, Madison. So yeah, let's clean this up a little bit, and either Nicholas or Terry, if you can, as Madison alluded to, just read that motion, reasonable inconsistency statement, say the request is inconsistent, and then read the future land map, future planning goals, and then add your reasonings behind it, and we'll tie this up in a neat bow. If you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you.
So Terry, do you want to tag team?
Sure thing.
The request is inconsistent with the 2016 comprehensive plan. Sorry, I can't read the slide here.
We can see your Word document.
Yeah. So 2016 comprehensive plan and future planning goals of the town of Waxhaw. That is located on a Providence Road corridor. Due to the increased utility demands on water, sewer, roadways, and adjacent property values.
Additionally, we had requested engineering studies to be performed if this were going for further consideration. Also noted was the poorly qualified opinion of the adjacent neighborhoods and even in the surrounding communities, which can be affected up to several miles away.
All right, this is Chairman Shelton. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Nicholas. This will be passed on as our recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
I think we would need a vote from all members as well.
Certainly we do. So Barbara, please work your magic.
Chairman Scott Shelton,
That's a no.
Sorry, what's this vote for? I'm not clear.
for the
Inconsistency plan statement.
So we're voting on the statement itself?
That is
Correct.
correct.
Yes, that's
So with
correct.
what you just read, that it's inconsistent with the comp plan and future planning goals due to increased utility demands on water and sewer and roadways and adjacent property values. Board believes further engineering is needed and no effort for transparency with adjacent properties.
Thank you. I'm not clear why we're voting on the statement that was just voted upon by the group.
That is my question as well. This is Deepa Leme.
We had a vote on.
Yeah,
rezoning
this is
itself.
Chairman Shelton. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I was just saying we had a vote on the zoning itself. We denied it. And now we have to say why it's consistent or inconsistent. Which is. the
I think this is
statement.
just normal procedure.
Chairman
It's
Shelton, yes, this is
exactly
normal
right.
protocol.
I'm not clear on how a vote on the statement that gained approval is required. That
Well,
seems to take it to a different vote.
Yeah, we voted that we wouldn't approve the zoning as presented, but now we have to give them a reason why we voted the way we voted. So
And I'm
we're-
hearing a no to that. So
we're-
I don't know how they can have a vote no on our comments.
This is
we-
Mayor. So Nicholas Nash, to your point, I think we voted no because of this statement, and now I'm trying to understand why we have to again vote for the statement.
Agree.
This is Chairman Shelton. We haven't had, since we had our new members join, this type of procedure before, that we actually have content we're voting on and approving motions, providing recommendations, and then we have inconsistent or consistency statements. So it's a two-step approach. And Lisa, if I'm not explaining this correctly, please join in. But so there was one where there was a motion for a recommendation, and then you guys provided that motion. You did not recommend, and now you provide the inconsistency statement, and so now we vote on that. It's a two-step process.
Okay. I do hear
So
what you're
one
saying. I
person.
don't agree with the process, so that could be noted, please. And I would say that what makes more sense is if you were listing a pro and a con in the same paper. Certainly your voice could be heard, but I don't understand because the secondary vote could cancel the first vote.
This is Chairman Shelton. Terry noted, this is the procedures that have been in place for a very long time, since I've been a part of this board, and it's kind of a standard protocol. But with that said, duly noted, and we still have to proceed with the vote. So we'll, please, Barbara, if you can proceed with the vote, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to start again. Chairman Shelton,
That's a no.
Vice Chair Bob Morgan,
Also a no.
Nicholas Nash,
Aye.
Terry Nolan,
Aye.
Deborah Nemay,
Aye.
James Granger.
Aye.
I have 4 ayes and 2 nays.
Thank you, Barbara. Now we'll proceed to the next business. Number 2, Old Town Village Petition, SUB-011-965-2021. Petition information, request by the applicant, Broad Street Homes, Inc., for a by right preliminary subdivision plan on approximately 9.96 acres. I won't even attempt to read all the tax parcel ID numbers. Located between North Providence Street and Washington Street. The proposed subdivision will contain 63 single-family attached dwelling units and 3 single-family detached cottage-style dwelling units. And the action requested, staff recommends approval with the following motion. 1, a motion for a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for petition SUB-011-965-2021 as presented. Number 2, a motion for an unfavorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for petition SUB-011-965-2021 as presented. And we'll turn this presentation over to Madison Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you guys see the full screen in front of you?
Yes.
So this is, as you alluded to, this is a major subdivision preliminary plan submittal for a subdivision called Old Town Village. So as you mentioned, this is a request by Broad Street Homes for a what we're calling, it's a by right preliminary subdivision plan on those 9.96 acres. The proposed subdivision will contain 63 single-family attached or townhomes and it will include 3 single-family detached cottage-style dwelling units. And so, as part of our old ordinance and zoning map, this request was submitted under our Unified Development Ordinance. So it is not under our new Land Development Code and zoning maps. This is an aerial map of the proposed subdivision. You can see makes connections. So it's looking north to south. So this is North Providence Street. If you guys are familiar with the BB&T Bank along North Broome Street, this is it here. You have the Southbrook subdivision here, and then further south will be parts of downtown. So this is going to be a little bit different looking zoning map than what Lisa presented, since we're under the UDO. So the subject properties were zoned UN, or urban neighborhood. And so you guys saw the rezoning of this back in, I guess if it went to the BOC in November, you guys saw it in October, where parts of the development was zoned R4. And so it is now all zoned UN for the purpose of developing this residential community. So the future land use map, again, with in lines with our UDO and our old future land use map. The future land use map calls for this area to be the G4 downtown residential. And so this allows for a mixture of detached single family, cottages, duplexes, townhomes. And so the permitting densities for this are 4 to 20 dwelling units per acre, just depending on the site layout and characteristics. So this is a screenshot of the what they're calling the overall layout plan or the site plan. So you see the main entry off of North Providence Street. You have the townhomes or single family attached in these rows here along Mill Street, this public right of way, and then the 3 cottage homes here. So you're looking at, so to the north is to the right of my screen, and then so east, and then south to the left of my screen. And so you can see the 63 townhome units, and then you can see the layout of it. And I'll go into further detail further in my presentation as well. And of course, we can come back to the site plan once I get through my presentation. So transportation. So we contract with Kinley Horn as our kind of our transportation for our TIAs and transportation tech memos. And so a transportation tech memo scoping meeting has been conducted for this to kind of draft trip generations, study intersections, and then review available planning documents along with this. And so they have finished the scoping in which Kinley Horn, the applicant, and then town staff attended. And so now the background data collection has also been complete. And this is where they study turning movements, crash data, and they visit the site for this process. And so at this point, prior to, of course, construction document approval, Kinley Horn will conduct the traffic analysis, and then the recommendations must be agreed upon prior to the approval of the construction document phase of this development, in which the town, the applicant, and the consultant, Kinley Horn, all parties will have to agree to the transportation mitigations, and it will also be must meet the town's TIA ordinance as well, which is what we have all of our developments go through and must meet requirements of. And so the proposed subdivision provides the main point of ingress and egress off of North Providence Street. And then, of course, depending on the transportation tech memo or the TTM, to make connections elsewhere. So the proposed subdivision has stub outs to adjacent properties and then provides a grass paver connection to the east for emergency vehicle access. Sidewalks are provided throughout the entire subdivision, and the townhomes will have rear-loaded alleys with driveways, and the single-family detached shall have front-loaded garages with driveways provided. Recreation space requirement. So the proposed subdivision itself is required to dedicate 5% of the gross land area for recreation space. And so the subdivision is providing 2.3 acres of tree save area and common open space. So the one area that they're referring to as the square is required to be 1/4 of an acre. And so they are providing that in accordance with our requirements and with additional tree save and common open space, which you will see on the next page. So this is, it outlines the landscaping for this project. So there are no buffer requirements in the urban neighborhood zoning district. And so they are, like I said, dedicating larger amount areas of tree save and providing buffers along the eastern and western portions of these proposed developments as additional buffering from existing developments. So as proposed elevations, this is their renderings for this. So as you can see, some elements of it are distinctive of our downtown, where you have raised parapets, you have altering elevations, styling, arched windows, you have different details that they've incorporated into their design of their 2-story townhome units. And so it's a mixture of lap siding and brick for the elevations here. And then here is just a bigger image of that for you guys to see. And then here just kind of shows the front, rear, and side elevations. And so as part of our analysis, they are required to show all sides of their elevations. So for the planning staff recommendation, staff recommends approval of this proposed by right subdivision based on the consistency with the UDO and the comp plan policy bridge and future land use map designation. This is a major subdivision request, and therefore no conditions can be placed on the approval. And so I will also note, this is an administrative decision, which requires staff to apply standards set in our ordinance to the submittal itself. And so with that, the submittal meets all of our standards. And the next page would be for our motions. And so we have motion for a favorable recommendation to the BOC, and then a motion for an unfavorable recommendation. But again, I will note, these are administrative processes. So if they meet the requirements of our ordinance, they are meant to be approved, since it is more of an administrative process. And then-
Chairman Shelton speaking. So with that said, is Broad Street representatives here, and would they like to provide any comments before I open this up to discussion?
Sure, and so they are here. I will mention ahead of time that we have worked with this project for quite some time, going back and forth, having meetings. They have had great conversations with the adjoining neighbors for this project. And so they've really taken into account a lot of our recommendations as far as styling and tree saves, and really working with us on this project. And I think bringing a good project to the downtown area. And so, so Chris If you are
Sure.
there, feel free to, if you'd like to say something, or if you'd like me.
No, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yep, hear you loud and
Great.
clear.
Chairman Shelton, thank you for that and allow me to speak. And Madison, thank you for the thorough presentation and all your hard work. Again, really appreciate it. And thanks to all the, planning board members. I know this is a volunteer work and again, just appreciate your leadership throughout this. So I do have a couple actually additional renderings to share, but before that, I just wanted to kind of share with you some of the background of this project and how it's changed in the last year and a half. I think if you were to kind of compare our early plans with what we have now, I think it's a great example of how much a project can improve when you incorporate, the community's, concerns, their recommendations, staff concerns, recommendations, and ultimately what you end up with. I think what we landed on is a great community, for Waxhaw. So I think another thing just to kind of quickly note is that Broad Street Homes is the principal. Brian Ignema is a Waxhaw resident. He's lived here for over 15 years. I'm a Waxhaw resident. In fact, I live on Fairgreen Ave, which is right behind the property that we discussed or that was discussed earlier. And my family's been here since '96, so I'm almost a local, I guess, by some considerations. So it's not being a local builder. It's not sometimes you have national builders that come in here and just take a product they have off the shelf that kind of gives that cookie cutter look that's been implemented throughout Charlotte. Sometimes they'll go in here and just kind of check all the UDO boxes and that's all I do, try to cram in density, check boxes and rock and roll. And being members of the community, we want to continue to build here, for many years. And we know that to do that, we have to deliver a great project. So as Madison, as you mentioned, we have, spoken many times with the neighbors that surround the community, neighbors to the south, neighbors off of North Providence. Met with them early on in this process. Commissioner McMillan was really instrumental in kind of getting us all together to kind of discuss it. And although there's many things that we discuss, I think there's kind of 5 things that were kind of main concerns that we addressed and incorporated. And I just want to kind of talk through those. And I'll promise I'll be as brief as possible. So the first thing, as you mentioned, Madison, is that on North Providence, originally in the initial plans, we had on-street parking. And actually, let me pull that up. I'm sorry, guys. Am I able to share the screen? Pardon me. All right, can everybody see that PDF on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And as you can see, there's our entrances between 2 single-family houses that are on North Providence. Originally, the plan showed public parking or guest parking along that. And in speaking with the neighbors, we realized that wasn't a good plan to have, on street. Although it was, I think staff actually in Waxhaw needs some parking there. We knew it wouldn't be good for our neighbors there. So we've actually increased the buffer. We added a landscape buffer on top of our planting strips and of course the sidewalks along there. So, and Brian's committed to work with those neighbors to with the landscape architect to design, plantings that will really buffer that area and buffer that entrance. So that was kind of one of the first concerns that we discussed. One of the other concern was just the height of these townhomes. I think people were really concerned. We have the ability to put a 3-story product on here, and that just wouldn't really fit well, with the neighborhood. So not only have we built a 2-story product, but we're incorporating a flat roof. And I'm going to share one more PDF here. Let's see, pardon me. This is actually kind of an updated rendering, but these are flat roof to not only kind of decrease the maximum height, but again, to kind of take in some of the architecture, from downtown. Another main concern was, and a couple of the planning board members mentioned, is kind of the quality of the product. So as you can see, all of our exterior finishes are hard surfaces. So these are going to be, fiber cement, which is your James, Hardy product, board and batten lap siding. We're also using a brick facade, as you can see. We've got metal accent roofs throughout this, throughout the product. So, although vinyl is a good product, there's not any vinyl siding on this product whatsoever. So again, we really wanted to put together a quality product. And like I said, kind of being a local builder, these are designed from scratch. So we're not just taking a product off the shelf that's been used before. And also you can see we've kind of mimicked some of the downtown architecture, some of the dental molding that you see, and as well as some of the corbels. The other main concern was that the buffers, is that making sure we had adequate buffer between the neighborhoods. So as Madison mentioned, there's not actually any buffer requirement between our community and the neighbors. But again, we want to be good neighbors if we just check the boxes that UDO. So we've incorporated a 35-foot landscape buffer where we could, and an additional 20-foot landscape buffer where we could as well, along our, the neighboring properties. Pardon me. Make sure I've got the right screen up there. Can you see that landscape buffer exhibit that's on there?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see, really in the areas that are purple is our landscape buffer. It's our intent, any trees that are there, we'll save and incorporate that in our plan as well. And then really the last thing is, in really speaking to some neighbors on Washington Street, we want to make sure that we had a transition. So as we go, as we near Washington Street, originally our plan had additional townhomes, and that was a big concern to the neighbors on Washington Street. So what we did is we reduced our density and we incorporated 3 kind of cottage style single family, which just transitions better, to that neighborhood. We also made sure that the access to Washington Street at that location is an emergency access only. Washington Street's pretty narrow, and if there's an emergency where a car perhaps is broken down or there's a fire emergency, that's the only access that we'll have, for those, for that area. So those were some of the, again, kind of the quick 5, if you will, that we want to make sure that we incorporated. Have had great feedback, from staff, obviously, as well as from the neighbors. And just want to, again, share a few of those. And let me go ahead and I'll pull back up that rendering for you, because that's pretty new, Mass. And I don't think you've seen that either.
I have not.
This is kind of hot off the press. So let me pull that back up so we can. There it is.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mason with land design is here as well. He's kind of the brains of the operation, and he can also answer any additional questions. So thank you.
Yeah. And I would like to,
Chairman, go ahead, Madison.
I apologize, Scott. Just wanted to say one more time that in my tenure here, at least in Waxhaw, this is the first development really get to work with the developer on such an extensive basis. And really they're satisfying us, the community, and all the other requirements that we have. And so it's been a great pleasure working thus far on this project and seeing kind of the preliminary sketches and kind of how it's progressed now, especially with staff putting, such an emphasis on this, and our board of commissioners putting an emphasis on it kind of matching the style of downtown. And I think they've done that well here. And so just once again, reiterating that it is a preliminary subdivision that is by right. And so they have met all of our requirements in our UDO. And so just ask that you consider that as well when you make your recommendation.
Okay, this is Chairman Shelton. Thank you, Madison. Thank you, Chris, for your presentation. And what we'll do is I'll first open this up to discussion, and then at the end, I'll make sure we do a roll call, and Barbara will call on each individual member to make sure they don't have any follow-up questions and or comments. So with that said, I'm going to open this up to discussion. Does anybody have any questions for the staff or Chris with Broad Street?
I'll take the lead. I do have some questions. This is Terry Nolan. Question for the staff or Chris, will there be an HOA involved in this property?
Yes, there will be an HOA.
And who will that HOA be assigned to?
Well, typically when enough of their property owners, I think it's 75%, then it's
Mhm.
the HOA is taken over by the property owners, whoever signs up to take that role.
Okay,
And
so
then there'll be a property management group, which will be selected.
I guess that would be the better way to phrase that question. Who will be your property manager over this development?
That hasn't been selected yet.
Okay, and you have another build here in Waxhaw currently, correct?
Yes, Brian has a Grove Manor, which is right off of Waxhaw Marvin.
Okay, with this development, what will be your intention for rental properties?
This is a for sale.
Meaning, okay, so staff, I'm not sure how to word this question. I guess where I'm going with this is we have an existing development with Grove Manor.
Mhm.
And in that community, there's been quite a few concerns. There's been some feedback from residents. It's made its way through the community. We have issues with many properties that have been sold to known investors. The reports, and I've seen myself advertisements offering Waxhaw as an investor's haven. So just trying to get to the bottom of what the intention is here with this townhome community and what kind of regulations there will be.
Yeah, at this time, the covenants and restrictions haven't been written. I'm not sure what Brian, again, I know there's several folks have, bought some of those single family properties on Grove Manor that are investors, but majority are residents who love living here and enjoy it. So.
Yes, and I think there was an issue with it going beyond the HOA stated maximum allowance. And I do have a question to the staff. Does Waxhaw have a limit on how many properties can be owned by investors and leased out in this area?
We do not. I know in certain circumstances, for example, Millbridge, I believe they've, once their HOA has kind of taken over, they adopted their own procedures where there's only a certain amount of rental properties within a certain number of homes or something. But the town, at least in my experience, has not governed that. And off the top of my head, I couldn't cite a municipality that does. There may be some, but I'm not sure.
And I think I agree with you. I had spoken to some people regarding this in our area, and I think they do leave it to the HOA. And I think the dilemma for the homeowners is that the HOA is run by the developer until it's turned over, which is much later down the road. In Waxhaw, we do have some concerns with a very high level of renters that are not invested in the community. I live in Waxhaw, and I do hear this from my neighbors in my community as well as many others. There's a very big concern with who these properties will be marketed to. So I think I would have a greater level of confidence knowing that there's some level of restriction, but I'm not hearing any.
Sure, I'll get with Brian and discuss if there's plans to incorporate any restrictions in the initial covenants. Obviously this is being marketed for sale. It's not being marketed for rent. It's marketed for sale. There's a lot, and I hear it all the time too, just talking to different, real estate agents, where it's hard for folks to come in here and buy in Waxhaw because they're outbid. There's 30 showings in one day, and a lot of it's out of town. But the goal of this project and kind of size these townhome units is to, reach out to folks that are not, are kind of priced out of Waxhaw right now. So we really wanted to kind of design a product community that has cast a wide net. So young professionals, empty nesters, can live and kind of enjoy downtown Waxhaw. So.
Okay, thank you. And I do appreciate that as well. I think right now it's very easy to sell these directly to homeowners, primary
Mhm.
residents. I do want to note though on your website that you hold yourself out as being a build to rent builder. So
Yeah, and that's,
I'll leave it at that.
sure. Well, again, Broad Street Homes markets, they're a local builder, but they have projects and they're continuing to expand. They have a unique building process with their steel building, which I'm not sure if you've been in the Grove Manor community. It's a really unique, low waste, great product. So there are a lot of national builders who are looking to build kind of for rent neighborhoods. And certainly as a growing builder, that's an option that he looks to do. But that, again, this is a for sale community.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Chairman Shelton speaking. Terry, do you have any other questions? Okay,
No, thank you. That's it for now. Thank you.
thank you. Floor is open to anybody else. Any other questions or comments?
This is Nicholas Nash, and this is kind of a question to, I guess you, Madison. If this is is an administrative action, why is this coming before the planning committee?
Right, that's a good question. So in most municipalities, major subdivisions like this where they're dedicating right away, is usually an administrative process that stays with staff. Here in Waxhaw, it's kind of a mix where it's an administrative process that as long as they're meeting our requirements, they are typically recommended for approval. But here in Waxhaw, it requires a board approval on the final major subdivision. Likely because they're accepting streets eventually, so they like to be kind of a part of that process. But so in most municipalities, it stays with staff at administrative level, and so that's where we kind of rely on our ordinance for these requirements to ensure it's a good product.
Thank you, Masson. Chairman Shelton speaking. Nicholas, do you have any other questions?
No.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Well, my only comment is this has come before our board before, and I know the builder has, as Masson alluded to, has been working with the town staff to work through some of the issues we touched upon the first go around. So the cooperation is appreciated. I personally commented on those parking spaces that was going in between two residential homes. So that was a nice revision there to remove those. I did notice on the one plan sheet, construction sheet, and I know it's very preliminary, I did see like two of the townhomes, like it looked like it was in the RPA zone, or I don't know if that was an RPA zone or was that a stream buffer? I couldn't really tell, but other than that, I do appreciate the revisions. And so with that said, Barbara, let's go through one more time to each board member and make sure they don't have any further questions or comments.
Vice Chair Bob Morgan,
Yeah, Vice Chair Bob Morgan. Yeah, I have no comments. It looks like it's a good enough development.
Nicholas Nash,
Well, I would offer one more comment, is to add a lot of landscaping around the BMP. Those tend to be eyesores in any community, either driving by or even for the neighbors. So I'll leave it at that.
Terry Nolan,
Thank you. Can you touch back on the traffic in and out flow from Providence, how that will affect?
Right. So that's So that's the interesting part. So they haven't conducted the analysis yet to determine what those improvements are going to look like. So they've done the scoping, they've done the traffic counts. And so so it gets to this process, and before we approve it at construction document level, they will be required to conduct the study, and then they will be required to do all the mitigations as a part of that transportation tech memo. So it's so at that point is where we'll know what that improvements will look like, if it will require additional stub outs or connections, or anything additional really. So that's what we'll gauge: turn lane movements, roadway improvements, additional connections to other rights of ways. And so that's where that will kind of go.
Deborah Lemay.
So I literally had the same question about traffic because that was not discussed before in the discussion. So if that is not fully vetted out yet, Madison, will that impact any of these feasibilities depending on how that turns up?
So our TIA ordinance is a separate ordinance, I would say, from the requirements of a major subdivision. So the town requires it, and so they will be required to do it kind of outside of the subdivision requirement itself. So like the standards for like the facade treatments or roadways or such like that. So this will be, it's kind of an additional requirement that the town requires, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does, but I think then my understanding as a closure to this is that it will impact whatever the analysis will come up from that will impact the development of these townhomes, or the development of these townhomes and the traffic analysis and everything will impact the overall township traffic kind of whole grid.
Sure. And just kind of like, them installing stormwater ponds to mitigate additional runoff, what they'll be required to do is there to mitigate that additional number of homes and vehicles on the road.
Right, and then should this be a raised flag for overall development, or should we assume that it'll be kind of well resolved, but that'll be like a utopian thing that well resolved?
Right, and so from conversations and working with them thus far, the communication's been great. They've worked well with us. And so again, we all have to kind of come to an agreement where our traffic consultant, us and our TIA ordinance and developer, all these conditions have to be agreed upon before they even start building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was my question.
No, thank you.
James Granger.
No comment.
Chairman Shelton.
Chairman Shelton, I have no comment at this time. I'm satisfied with the questions and answers. Thanks to everybody for their comments and questions, to the town staff and to the developer. So with that said, motion for favorable or unfavorable recommendation. I'm asking for a motion, a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. Anyway.
Jim Granger here. I'll make a motion for a favorable recommendation to the BOC for petition of the plan as presented.
Thank you, James. And so with that, any further discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. Barbara?
Vice Chair Bob Morgan.
Yes.
Nicholas Nash.
Nay.
Terry Nolan.
Do not see her on the screen.
Yeah, I see that we lost her
She's in the attendees list. She may have lost connection there for a second.
connection. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Chairman Shelton. Barbara, please move on to the next person.
Devin Lemay,
Yes.
James Granger,
Yes,
Terry Nolan,
Terry Nolan, no.
Chairman Scott Shelton.
Chairman Shelton, aye.
Okay, I have 4 ayes and 2 nays.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we'll move on to open business number 3, text amendment. The text amendment TA-0126 10-2021, a text amendment to the Land Development Code sections 2.2-2.5-1 to create and establish composition in terms of office for the Planning Board, Board of Adjustment, and Historic Preservation Commission, and grant to the Planning Board the duties of the Board of Adjustment. So with that said, do we have a presentation from staff on this?
Yes, one moment.
Thank you, Lisa.
This is Bob. Quick question. Did we do a reasonable consistency statement for that last vote?
Oh, Bob, good job. Did not.
No, you don't have to. It's only for text amendments and rezoning.
Okay.
So that was a major subdivision. It was administrative, so it's not needed for
Okay,
that.
cool. Thank you, ma'am.
I'd
Good
like to
question.
note also that.
Good question, Bob.
Please pay attention to the waiting room. I did not hear Madison's full response on the last question, and I was trying to get back in for quite some time. Didn't have the opportunity. So thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is Chairman Shelton. I didn't get that. Please repeat that, Terry. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to see if we could appoint somebody to keep an eye out. I was trying to get back in for quite a while. I could hear all of you, but I couldn't respond. I didn't hear Madison's response to the question that I had asked about the transportation. The vote's done now, but just wanted to say when somebody comes back in, you have to let them in from the room, and maybe that's new. But thank you.
Chairman Shelton, Terry, thank you for pointing that out, and we'll definitely look at that and address that. Thank you very much. Okay, with that said, we are back to item number 3, the text amendment. And we'll have Lisa provide her presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. This petition is a request from the town to amend sections 2.2, 2.4, and 2.5 within the Waxhaw Land Development Code to add composition in terms of office to each board and have the Board of Adjustments serve and consist of members of the Planning Board. It is the recommendation of staff and OAB to combine the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment and give the duties of Board of Adjustment to the Planning Board. Combining the boards saves time and resources. We did have this combination of boards in my previous job with town of Weddington. It worked out really well. If we did have a Board of Adjustment case, we would call for a special meeting prior to the Planning Board meeting. So we would meet at 6, hear that case, and then at 6:30 reconvene as the Planning Board. Again, with the new uniform LDC, it's logical for Planning Board to do both functions. And the Board of Adjustment has only met a handful of times over the last few years, so we don't think it'll be a burden to you all. Within your staff report, you'll see the suggested changes in bold. At the August 10th Board of Commissioner meeting, staff will be requesting that the board remove the composition sections for the Planning Board, HBC, and VOA from the Waxhaw Code of Ordinance. This action abolishes the boards by ordinance. This is the only way to abolish a board and recreate a new board. To reestablish the boards, the town is required to amend the LDC, which this text will go to them for a decision at that meeting. And then the Board of Commissioners shall reappoint the sitting members of the planning board and appoint any new members as needed. Again, tonight, we need two recommendations. One is the land use plan consistency statement. The statement needs to describe how the text proposed is consistent or inconsistent and explain why the proposed action is reasonable and in the public interest. Staff has provided the following statement that can be adopted or modified as needed for the board's discussion. And then we'll need a motion to approve the text as presented. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chairman Shelton speaking. Thank you, Lisa, for that presentation. And with that, I open up the floor to discussion. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Very good. With that, can I have a motion for favorable or unfavorable recommendation?
This is Nick Nash. I would make a favorable motion to combine the two boards.
Thank you, Nicholas. If you could read that top line verbatim, that'll be appreciated.
This is Nick Nash. I would make a motion to recommend approval of the text amendment petition TA 01261102021.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you. Discussion, anyone? I see no hands waving, so I'm not sure, Lisa, do we have a consistency reading here or not? There we go. Nicholas, do you mind doing the honors?
The text amendment request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future planning goals of the town of Waxhaw, is reasonable and in the public interest, and that it continues to streamline the approval process that the LDC set out to accomplish and gives delegated ladies decision-making to one board.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. With that said, I think we're ready for a vote, Barbara.
Vice Chair Bob Morgan,
You're muted, Bob.
Sorry, I vote yes.
Nicholas Nash,
Aye.
Terry Nolan,
Aye.
Dipa Nemay,
Aye.
James Granger,
Aye.
Chairman Scott Shelton.
Chairman Shelton, aye.
The ayes are unanimous.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Our family's growing. Great. Looking forward to it. Okay, so item 4 that we'd added to amend the agenda, update and have discussion on the OAB meeting that was held earlier today. A couple things that we covered in the meeting where the roles were discussed. We had a review of the leadership and members. We also reviewed attendance. And we also discussed training and potential conferences. Just basically, if it's not to repeat or I know state the obvious, the plan Board of Adjustments does not meet as much. We certainly need the help and adding more members. So it was a logical approach to combine the boards. I will be reviewing applicants and providing recommendations on what we think would be a good fit for our board. We discussed and we had conversations with the OAB staff, and the mayor was participating with that along with Commissioner Westlick. Had some very productive conversations. They expanded how they would like to see my role and what more responsibilities I should take on. And providing leadership and guidance. And we reviewed attendance. I certainly brought up, in my time and experience, we definitely have a very good board here. We missed our last meeting, but that's a irregularity. Ever since I've been on this board, approaching over 4 years, we've never not had quorum. So this is the first time. And I simply chalk that up to, since we have such good attendance, that one or two board members didn't think their absence would matter. So I basically said we will definitely communicate and coordinate better. And should you know that you're going to have a conflict with your schedule, you will let me know ahead of time so we can adjust accordingly. But they're going to give us broader powers to have special meetings to compensate for that. So that is appreciated by the board and the mayor. So we don't have this issue, this one occurrence happen again. It just so happened we had very busy agenda and a lot of town business to get taken care of. But so with that said, we talked about training. They're offering training, and the town staff, including Melanie, is going to send me conferences that we can look at to attend and continue to develop our craft. So I look forward to discussing this with you guys, attending these meetings, attending these conferences, and try to get additional training. We all can use it. And like I said, to continue to hone our craft and serve the town of Waxhaw. So with that said, that's all I have on that. Is there any questions or comments? I see no hands waving, so we'll move on to the next item, which is E, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I know you're having too much fun.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Let's have a vote, Barbara.
Vice Chair Bob Morgan,
Aye.
Nicholas Nash,
Aye.
Terry Nolan,
Aye.
Dipa Nemay,
Aye.
James Granger,
Aye.
Chairman Scott Shelton.
Chairman Shelton, aye.
The ayes are unanimous.
Thank you. Thanks again for everybody's help and participation tonight. Much appreciated. And please have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, town staff. Thank you, board members.
Thank you. Look forward to meeting you guys.